My wife told me she wanted a divorce right there in our living room. She didn't even ease into it, just came out with it like she'd been waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger. And the first thing she threw at me was, "You can't even afford a lawyer to fight me." I looked at her, felt the weight of it, and simply said, "You're right." But a week later, when she walked into court and handed over the papers, her jaw practically hit the floor. Sitting beside me wasn't some public defender or discount attorney. No, it was the one man in this city everyone in her position dreads to see. The most ruthless, expensive divorce lawyer in the state. My older brother, Ethan. He leaned forward, gave her a cool glance, and said, "He doesn't have to afford me. I'm his brother." Let me back up. Last Monday, Bianca looked me dead in the eye and said she wanted out. There was no hint of sadness in her tone, no crack in her voice. It wasn't heartbreak, it was triumph, like she'd already won some long, private war. We were sitting in the same living room we had spent 10 years turning into a home. Yet the way she spoke, it felt like a stranger was delivering a verdict. She slid a folder across the coffee table and said, "It's over, Ryan. I've already talked to a lawyer. These are my terms." I didn't open it. Didn't have to. She was more than happy to rattle off the list herself. She wanted the house, my house, the one my grandfather helped me put a down payment on. She wanted 80% of our savings. She wanted spousal support for at least 5 years. It wasn't a discussion. It was an ambush, a surrender she expected me to sign without question. When she finished, she leaned back with that smug little smirk she wore when she thought she had the upper hand. "And I don't want to drag this out, Ryan," she added, dripping with pity that was more insulting than kind. "Let's be realistic. You're a teacher. You make okay money, but you can't afford real legal help. My lawyer will bury you in fees before you even step foot in a courtroom. It's smarter to just agree and walk away." I sat there, staring at the woman I'd built a life with, the woman I thought was my partner. But what I saw in that moment was someone who didn't just want to leave me. She wanted to break me. She saw me as weak, disposable. The silence stretched between us. Finally, I looked at her, kept my face unreadable, and gave her the words she was waiting for. "You're right." Her relief was instant. She thought she'd won. She stood up, smoothed down her skirt like a queen brushing off her robes, and said, "Good. I'm glad you're being sensible. You'll get the official papers next week." Then she walked out of the room without another glance. What Bianca knew was simple. She knew I didn't have a fortune tucked away. She knew I didn't have tens of thousands lying around for some drawn-out legal battle. And she knew I had a brother, Ethan. What she counted on was that Ethan and I hadn't spoken in 5 years. What she didn't count on was that Ethan isn't just any lawyer. He's a shark. He's the guy other lawyers dread running into in court. Ruthless. Precise. The kind of man who can tear apart a case before the other side even realizes what's happening. And as far as Bianca knew, he wasn't part of my life anymore. She was right about one thing. Ethan and I had fallen out after our parents died. It was over the family home, the house we grew up in. I wanted to keep it, to preserve the place that held our memories, a space for both our families. I've always been the sentimental type. I hang on to things that remind me of family, of roots, of where I came from. Ethan has always been the opposite. He's pragmatic to a fault. When our parents passed, he saw the old family house as nothing more than an illiquid asset, something to cash out and move on from. I, on the other hand, saw it as sacred ground, a place that carried echoes of our childhood. That difference turned into a war. We fought bitterly, each of us too stubborn to give an inch. By the end of it, we weren't just brothers. We were enemies standing on opposite sides of a canyon dug by pride. And for 5 years, we never spoke. Bianca knew that. She'd been there when the fallout happened. She saw Ethan storm out, and she saw me collapse into silence afterward. In her eyes, Ethan might as well have been dead to me. She thought I had no one, no ally, no family worth counting on. She built her whole plan on that assumption. She believed my biggest weapon was already broken. But she was wrong. For 3 days after she dropped the bomb, I fell into a dark hole. She was right about one thing. I couldn't afford to fight her, not on her terms. The thought of losing my home, my savings, everything I had poured my life into, it was suffocating, like a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. On the 4th day, I hit rock bottom. And once you're at the bottom, the only direction left is up. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I swallowed my pride. Pride had cost me my brother for 5 years, but it wasn't going to cost me everything else. I dug through old contacts, hunted down his private cell, and finally found the number. My hand shook as I dialed. I half expected to get voicemail, or maybe some cold assistant telling me he was unavailable. But after 2 rings, I heard it. A deep, familiar voice I hadn't heard in years. "Hello, Ethan," I said, my voice coming out weaker than I wanted. "It's Ryan." The pause that followed felt like a lifetime. For a second, I thought he might hang up. But then I heard it, Ryan. The old nickname rolled off his tongue, rusty but still there. "What's wrong?" And that was it. The dam broke. Everything I'd been carrying poured out. I told him about Bianca's cold little speech, about her demands, about the lawyer she'd already lined up. And finally, I told him her last taunt. "You can't afford a lawyer to fight me." There was silence again, long and heavy. But this time, when Ethan spoke, his voice had changed. The shock was gone. What replaced it was something I hadn't heard in years, the sound of an older brother's armor snapping back into place. His voice was steel. "She said what?" he asked, dangerously quiet. I repeated it. "Okay," he said flatly. "When's the first hearing?" "Next Monday. Downtown courthouse." "I'll clear my schedule. Don't talk to her. Don't talk to her lawyer. Don't sign a damn thing. Just show up Monday. I'll be there." And that was it. We hung up. I sat there, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. It wasn't relief exactly. It was a mix of fear and a dangerous kind of hope. Bianca thought she had cornered me, stripped me of every defense. What she didn't realize was she had just handed me the key to something far more powerful than money. She'd woken up the one person you never want to see across the aisle in divorce court. She was about to learn the hard way what family really means. The morning of the hearing came, and the sky opened up in a miserable, gray rain. It felt fitting. I walked into the courthouse alone, looking every bit the man Bianca expected to see. Beaten, broke, and already halfway buried. I wore my only suit, the one that usually only comes out for weddings and funerals. That day it felt like a little bit of both. The courtroom was as sterile as you'd imagine. Cold walls, hard benches, and the faint smell of old paper and nervous sweat. When I walked in, Bianca was already seated at the plaintiff's table. And God, she looked like she belonged there. She was dressed sharp, in a dark blue power suit, her hair perfectly styled, her confidence practically radiating across the room. She looked like a woman certain she was about to win. Bianca looked like she was about to close a big corporate deal, not dissolve a marriage. She sat there with her back straight, her chin high, radiating smug confidence. Next to her was her lawyer, a man in his 50s with the kind of face that carried a permanent smirk, like life had never once told him no. They were leaning toward each other, whispering and chuckling quietly, like this was all a game they'd already won. When I walked in, Bianca spotted me. For just a split second, her grin faltered, and something softer flickered across her face. Pity. Not regret. Not second thoughts. Just pity. She probably expected me to shuffle in, broken and hunched over. Instead, I met her gaze with an expression so blank it could have been carved in stone. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me crack. I walked to the defendant's table, set down my battered old briefcase, the same one I'd carried since grad school, and waited. Her lawyer got up, smoothing his suit jacket like he was about to take a victory lap. He strolled over to my table with all the arrogance in the world. "Mr. Harper," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Glad you could make it. I trust you've had a chance to review my client's very generous proposal. If you're ready to sign today, we can wrap this up quickly and painlessly." I didn't even look at him when I answered. "I'm waiting for my counsel." He actually laughed. A short, dismissive chuckle. "Your counsel? Good luck with that. Let's not waste the court's time." Then he turned his back on me and sauntered back to Bianca's side, clearly convinced the fight was already over. A moment later, the bailiff called the court to order. Everyone rose as the judge entered, a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes that scanned the room like she could see straight through every lie ever told in her courtroom. She took her seat, glanced down at the docket, and said, "Harper versus Harper. Are both parties present and represented?" Bianca's lawyer was quick to his feet. "Yes, Your Honor. Victor Lang, representing the plaintiff, Mrs. Bianca Harper." The judge's eyes shifted to me. I opened my mouth to answer, but before a word left my lips, The heavy doors at the back of the courtroom slammed open with a thunderous thud. Every head in the room turned. And there he was. Ethan. He wasn't just walking, he was arriving. The man moved with the slow, calculated grace of a predator. His suit looked like it had been spun out of midnight itself, tailored so sharp it could cut glass. At his side, his leather briefcase swung with the quiet authority of a weapon being unsheathed. The room reacted before I even could. A ripple of whispers spread like wildfire. Court clerks, other attorneys, hell, even the judge, recognized him instantly. His reputation had walked in 15 seconds before he did. He didn't spare Bianca or her lawyer a glance. His eyes were locked on me, steady and unshakable. He strode down the aisle, reached my table, and placed a firm hand on my shoulder. He gave it a squeeze, reassuring, grounding. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't alone in this fight. Then, with deliberate calm, he set his gleaming briefcase on the table. The metal clasp snapped shut with a click that echoed in the silent courtroom like a judge's gavel. I glanced at Bianca. Her confidence was gone, completely erased. Her smug little smirk had dissolved into shock. Her jaw hung loose, her eyes wide with disbelief. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost walk in and sit beside me. Her lawyer looked even worse. The blood had drained from his face. That permanent smirk he wore had been wiped clean, replaced by raw, unfiltered terror. He knew exactly who Ethan was. Everyone did. Ethan leaned close to me, keeping his voice low enough for only me to hear. "Sorry I'm late, little brother," he whispered, a faint grin tugging at his lips. Traffic was hell. I almost laughed, but before I could, he straightened. His whole demeanor shifted in an instant, calm, cold, professional. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and faced the judge. "Ethan Harper, Your Honor," he announced, his baritone filling the room with effortless authority. "Representing the defendant, Mr. Ryan Harper." The judge's eyebrows shot up. She knew the name. Of course she did. Everybody in law did. Then Ethan turned, slowly, deliberately, toward Bianca and her lawyer. His gaze lingered on her for a moment, then slid over to Victor Lang, who was already paling by the second. And then Ethan smiled. Not warmly, not kindly. It was a predator's smile, cold and sharp. The kind of smile that promised this fight was going to end badly for the other side. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks, then offered the judge a polite nod. "My apologies for the delay," he said, his voice smooth, almost courteous, though anyone listening could hear the steel beneath it. Then he turned, looked directly at Bianca, and with the calm confidence of a man who had already won, delivered the line that shattered her world. "He doesn't have to afford me. I'm his older brother." The effect was instant. You could feel the shift in the room like the air had been sucked out. Bianca hadn't walked into a divorce hearing. She'd walked straight into an ambush. Ethan flipped open his briefcase, and with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation, pulled out a thick stack of files. The demolition began right there. One by one, he dismantled every single demand she had made. He called them predatory, filed in bad faith, and announced that we would be submitting a counter-petition. His voice was calm, professional, but every word was a scalpel cutting deep. He told the court we would be seeking a full forensic audit of all marital assets and expenditures for the last 3 years. He stated, without a hint of hesitation, that we would also be demanding Bianca cover every cent of my legal fees. Her lawyer, Victor Lang, looked like he'd just been shoved into shark-infested waters without a life vest. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, but all he managed was a stammer. He had come in thinking he was the predator. What he realized in that moment was that he was nothing more than bait. The battle wasn't just lost, it was over before it even began. The 2 months that followed weren't a divorce case, they were a war. And Ethan doesn't fight wars halfway. He doesn't just practice law, he wages a campaign. Bianca and her attorney thought they'd steamroll me. Instead, they found themselves buried under a relentless, coordinated legal blitzkrieg. The first strike? Ethan filed a motion for discovery that was, by all accounts, a thing of terrifying beauty. It wasn't a polite request, it was a demand for everything. 5 years of bank statements, every credit card bill, work expenses, travel reports, Venmo transfers, every financial breadcrumb Bianca had left behind. Her lawyer scrambled, filing a motion to dismiss, claiming Ethan's demands were excessive, harassing, unreasonable. The judge barely blinked. She took one look at Ethan's airtight justification and granted it in full. Bianca was legally bound to turn over everything. She thought she'd been clever. She thought she'd hidden her tracks. What she didn't realize was that Ethan didn't just have paralegals. He had a team of forensic accountants who treated puzzles like this as a form of entertainment. While Bianca was drowning in paperwork, Ethan turned up the pressure. He scheduled deposition after deposition, not just with her, but with her friends, her family, even colleagues from her office. His strategy was simple: squeeze from every angle until the truth bled out. The turning point came during the deposition of Bianca's best friend, a woman named Lila. Now, Lila was loyal to Bianca, fiercely so. But loyalty only carries you so far when Ethan Harper is sitting across the table. He was polite, disarmingly charming even, but underneath it all he was merciless. For 3 straight hours he questioned her, Bianca's spending habits, her work, trips, her general happiness in our marriage. Then, casually, like he was asking about the weather, Ethan dropped the question that cracked the case wide open. "Miss Monroe, can you tell me about Mr. Nathan Brooks?" I saw Lila flinch. Just a tiny flicker, but Ethan caught it. He always catches it. The name meant nothing to me. But Ethan didn't rush. He just waited, letting the silence do the work. Lila shifted in her chair, tried to play dumb, but it was too late. The crack had already shown. Then Ethan pulled out the trump card. A stack of credit card statements from an account I didn't even know existed. A card tied directly to our joint savings account. An account Bianca had been siphoning money from, quietly, for more than a year. Ethan tapped his finger on the page, pointing to a neat little column of charges. "A luxury hotel in wine country," he said slowly. "A diamond necklace from one of the most expensive boutiques in the city. Candlelit dinners for 2 at places that don't even list prices on the menu." Then he turned his sharp eyes back on Bianca's best friend. "Miss Harper claimed she was at a work conference during these dates. But I've already spoken with her employer, and guess what? There was no conference. You weren't there either. So let me ask you one more time. Who is Nathan Brooks?" Lila's face went pale. I swear I could hear the silence in the room. Under oath, with the penalty of perjury hanging over her head, she cracked. Her voice trembled as she admitted the truth. Nathan Brooks wasn't some stranger. He was the man Bianca had been sleeping with for the last year and a half. A wealthy real estate developer she had met through her old job. And suddenly, it all made sense. The secrecy, the constant financial pressure, the smug confidence she carried into those negotiations. She wasn't just leaving me. She was leaving me for him. And worse, she wasn't content to simply walk away. No, she wanted to strip our marriage down to the studs, loot every asset she could, and carry it all into her shiny new life with Nathan. Her plan was to use my own money to bankroll their future together. But Ethan wasn't done. The deposition of Nathan himself was the nail in the coffin. The man strutted in, arrogant and smug, with the kind of smirk that makes you want to put a fist through it. He thought he was untouchable. He thought he was smarter than everyone else in the room. But he had never gone toe-to-toe with my brother. Under Ethan's calm but relentless questioning, his arrogance started to crumble. Within hours, he admitted it all. The affair, the fact that he and Bianca had plotted the divorce in advance, and even that it was his brilliant idea for her to go after the house and spousal support. His logic? That I was too poor and too weak to fight back. They had underestimated me. They had underestimated my family. And now the truth was laid bare, documented, and recorded for the court to hear. With those depositions, Bianca's case wasn't just weakened, it was obliterated. She had lied under oath. She had hidden money and stolen from our marital accounts. She was a proven fraud. Her lawyer, sounding like a man already broken, called Ethan the next day, practically begging for a settlement. Bianca, he said, would drop all her demands and just walk away. Ethan didn't even hesitate. His voice was ice. "No, walking away is a privilege she hasn't earned. We're not settling. We're going to court, and we're going to burn her to the ground." She had wanted a war. Now she had won. It's been 6 months since that first day I walked into the courtroom, convinced I'd already lost everything. I thought my marriage was gone, my dignity gone, my future gutted. But I was wrong. I didn't lose what really mattered. I found it again. I came out stronger. By the time the final hearing rolled around, it was little more than a formality. The evidence against Bianca was overwhelming. The depositions, the forensic audits, the credit card receipts, the proof of her affair, the emails outlining her scheme to commit fraud. Her lawyer looked exhausted, beaten down, and advised her to accept whatever terms we put on the table. And Ethan made sure those terms were brutal. Bianca didn't just walk away empty-handed. She walked away buried. She was stripped of any claim to the house. Her spousal support demand was thrown out with prejudice, meaning she could never try again. And because Ethan had meticulously proven she spent over $50,000 of marital funds on her affair, hotels, jewelry, vacations, the works, the judge ordered that money reimbursed to me. It was taken straight from her supposed share of our savings. In the end, she walked out with a tiny fraction of what she came for, saddled with a mountain of legal bills, and the very public humiliation of her lies being exposed in open court. Her scheme had blown up in her face, and everyone could see it. And the fallout in her personal life? That was a storm of its own. Nathan Brooks, her lover, didn't stick around. Faced with the legal storm and the public humiliation he'd helped create, he dumped her almost immediately. He was a man drawn to winners, and Bianca had just suffered a defeat so spectacular it might as well have been televised. Her friends, many of whom had been forced to testify against her under oath, began to disappear from her life. Slowly, methodically, they distanced themselves. In the end, she lost everything in a single, crushing blow: her fiancé, her house, her savings, her boyfriend, and her reputation. All of it gone. And the only reason? She underestimated the quiet man she had married. The one she thought was weak, alone, and helpless. But the real story, the part that matters most, wasn't about her. It was about my brother. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, Ethan called me. "Meet me at the old house," he said. I drove out to our parents' place, the house that had been the source of our stupid feud. When I arrived, Ethan was sitting on the porch, just staring out at the yard. No anger, no stern lawyer demeanor. Just him, quietly waiting. We didn't talk about Bianca. We didn't talk about the court case. We talked about Dad's terrible fishing trips, Mom's amazing apple pie, and the stupid games we played as kids. For a little while, it felt like nothing had changed, and everything was changing at the same time. Finally, after a long silence, he looked at me. "I was wrong, Ryan," he said quietly. "I was so focused on the money, on the assets, I forgot what this place really was. It's our home." I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. I was wrong too, I admitted. I was stuck in the past, blind to the possibility that maybe there was a different future for this house. A better future. We didn't sell it. We decided to keep it, together. Over the past few weekends, we've been out there working side by side, fixing the porch, painting rooms, breathing life back into every corner. The house isn't just a memorial to the past anymore. It's a project for the future, a space for family, real family, to gather. Working with my brother, tools in hand, side by side, has healed a wound I thought would scar forever. Bianca's final insult, that I couldn't afford a lawyer, that I was weak and alone, was the very thing that brought Ethan back into my life. She thought she was isolating me. Instead, she reunited me with the most important person I have. She tried to leave me with nothing. But here I stand today, my home secure, my brother at my side, and I realize something I never knew before. I have everything that truly matters.